Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and unfortunately we got some real bad news to dive into today. For the fourth time in the last 18 months, Microsoft is planning layoffs on their Xbox division, but again, these are supposed to be substantial layoffs, and I feel really bad for anyone working beneath the Xbox banner because this news broke really early, and it's apparently not happening until next week. We're going to dive through all the information in the studios that are likely to be affected from these layoffs. It's a sad time, and Xbox keeps saying that they have made a sustainable business, like in a recent interview with Phil Spencer at Summer Games Fest, yet I keep seeing them making cuts despite having record profits over at Microsoft. Make it make sense, dude. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into what's going on with Xbox, consider subscribing. The news first broke via Bloomberg through Jason Schreier. He posts, Microsoft plans major job cuts at Xbox gaming division. He writes then, Microsoft will conduct another round of major layoffs in its Xbox division next week as part of a company-wide reorganization. Managers within Xbox are expecting substantial cuts across the entire group, according to people familiar with the plans who asked to not be identified discussing non-public information. The company declined to comment. Since then, the dam had burst, and so we have a ton of brand new information to pick through to kind of help deduce what exactly is happening with the Xbox business and what teams will be affected. So the next step was Tom Warren of The Verge, who then posted a follow-up story to what Jason wrote, saying Microsoft planning major Xbox layoffs next week. And he narrowed the search a little bit, saying that one source tells me Microsoft is restructuring Xbox distribution across Central Europe, resulting in some Xbox operations ceasing in some regions. This had been a rumor for a long while that Xbox was going to pull out of particular regions around Europe and the Middle East, but they kind of went on unconfirmed. At the same time, though, Xbox has really struggled to grow in regions outside of the United States. So for them to sort of concede that is definitely concerning, especially when just last week they were firming up some next generation plans. The other idea I had was physical game production. This is something Xbox has no doubt been pulling out of for a while now, and I think we're just a year or two away from them just being completely digital. But this was a story that started to float around that Xbox was going to cease all physical game production, and when they started to offload things to limited run, then I started to see, again, reading between the lines, okay, Xbox is definitely out on this, and it's just a collector's item to them, if anything. So that sort of set the table, and many of us were ready to just wait until next week and see exactly how bad things would be. But then George Broussard, who is the co-founder of 3D Realms and tapped into the industry enough to at least lean into this statement here, said the following on Twitter. News has reported imminent Xbox layoffs, but I'm hearing internal developer level stuff where people at virtually every studio are anxious and worried. Word that potentially entire studios may be shuttered. Expectations are 1,000 to 2,000 people. I think Xbox as a unit has about 10K people in it, so 10 to 20%. Good luck to all involved. Brutal. Now, I always say with this type of stuff where it's sort of outsider information, it's not your usual Xbox sources, take it with a grain of salt. Like, I'm not going to lean too heavily into 1,000 to 2,000 people or 10 to 20% until I actually see that happen. I don't want to react too early on that. The idea, though, that studios may be shuttered, we're really not that far removed from what I called Evil Villain Xbox last year, where they rolled in 4 different teams, one of them being Tango Gameworks, who just dropped their biggest hit in Hi-Fi Rush, which Xbox did state was a commercial success. Fortunately, Krafton was there to save them, and Xbox kept Tango and their team afloat enough, I guess, before fully shutting them down to make sure that team lived on. But 2 other Bethesda teams were rolled into ZeniMax Online Studios, and then we lost Arcane Austin, where now we're wondering what, like, Harvey Smith is going to end up. Harvey Smith being like, I think, a generational talent in this industry and has made some of the best games ever, been part of some of the best games ever. But again, those are 4 teams that just kind of disappeared or got rolled into others. But what preceded those events were, as we saw, underperformances. Redfall was a disaster. It was the worst reviewed Xbox game of this generation. It did not do well. The support for the game got cut, and then the studio got shut down. So it's not too far-fetched to say that studios could be shuttered. And I know it's considered in the industry tasteless to speculate about these things and who could be affected, but people talk about it because it's not always just like, ooh, what's the tea? It's because people like me and others who are enthusiasts care about the business and want to know what studios who we love are going to be potentially affected by this. Now, following up this statement from George, Andy Robinson of Video Games Chronicle, who's accurately reported a lot of inside information for the industry across Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, said he can't confirm any specific details, and I imagine few would be able to, but there's certainly a lot of negative chatter coming out of the UK Xbox studios today. For the sake of employees, I hope details are confirmed swiftly, as I said earlier, but I expect this will drag well into next week. And again, my heart goes out to them because that's just really tough to deal with, just knowing whether or not you're going to make the cut. Tom Warren then posted on his notepad over at The Verge the following, quote, "There's online speculation that entire studios could be closed, and I've heard from sources that Turn 10, the studio behind Forza Motorsport, is bracing for cuts." So what I want to do now is kind of assess the Xbox portfolio and the ones that I feel either fit the mold best for like EU studios or underperforming candidates, and just kind of give my assessment and then round things out with why I feel like Xbox is in this position. So let's look at the EU studios. You have teams like Arcane Leon. They recently brought out Deathloop. Deathloop hit 5 million players. Deathloop seemed to do well. It also reviewed, at least with critics, really well, while user reviews were a little bit different, a little bit more, I'd say, measured than the 10 out of 10s the game was getting. But they're working on Blade right now, and when they did announce this game, they said, let us cook for a while, we're going to be gone for a while. And I don't know when this one may show up, but I feel like given that we already lost one Arcane studio, and this one got by pretty unscathed, unless that project is on fire, I feel like Leon could be okay, especially given they are working on a Marvel game, a high-profile licensed IP. Same goes for Machine Games. They just put out Indiana Jones. In fairness, though, that was their first game since Wolfenstein Youngblood. And Indiana Jones, I don't know really how well this did on the market. Its Steam player count was questionable, but that happens a lot with Xbox games when you really look at it. That's thanks to Xbox Game Pass, where most people are like, why would I play on Steam? I can get it for cheaper on Game Pass. That's how it works. But one common thread throughout this conversation will be that there's a lot of companies that have maybe even released great games, games you love or games I love in the case of Indiana Jones, but there's a huge gap between their releases, which puts pressure on the game they just put out to perform strongly. I'll get into a company that I think is more likely to be affected, but Indiana Jones did just release on PS5, seem to be doing okay there based on the sales charts for PlayStation. Again, we don't have real hard numbers for it. It's hard to tell, but the rumor was that Xbox was pretty happy with Indiana Jones and they want to do more with it. At the same time, though, Xbox was also apparently happy with Hi-Fi Rush, and we really don't know until the calls are made and the news officially breaks. One team that could be affected potentially is Elsewhere Entertainment. This is not a name that many are familiar with, but this is a brand new Activision studio built in Poland working on a new AAA IP. Given they're building the studio from the ground up and what we saw happen with The Initiative, I feel like this could be an easy candidate since nothing has really happened here yet. We don't know if this is a project that's still in the incubation stage, if it's exited such. Time will tell. Mojang has multiple studios, but they're primarily based in Sweden, similar to Machine Games, so we'll see what happens there. I mean, Minecraft makes stupid money. The movie just did crazy numbers, so I feel like if you're working on Minecraft anything, you're probably pretty safe. Again, just a lot of guesswork here, but Playground Games, this is a big one here because I feel like they've been one of the most rock-solid Xbox game studios this generation, one of the best purchases Xbox did make. They're working on Fable, which is apparently due out next year, but Phil also did tease at the end of the Xbox showcase that Forza is coming out next year, and it looks like we might get a double feature for Playground Games. I feel like they need all the staff they can get to release both Forza Horizon 6 and Fable next year, so I feel like they're the last team you'd want to make anyone redundant for, but again, Xbox has laid off some real crucial talent before, so it would not surprise me if they did something stupid here. Ninja Theory is a company's name that I've seen float around in conversation a lot. They are releasing the PS5 port for Hellblade 2 in August. They're doing a little free update for it for Xbox fans. Overall, I think Ninja Theory is more important to the Xbox tech side of things than people give credit for. With motion capture and Unreal Engine 5 technology, I feel like they do have a place in supporting Xbox studios beyond their own projects. At the same time, it seems like they are moving along on something they were all previewing as a team. Something at Ninja Theory ahead of the Xbox Game Showcase, presumably Project Mara. Much like another team I'll talk about here, the wait for Hellblade 2 was pretty crazy. And for what we got, which was like a 5 to 6 hour game and a lot more divisive than I think any of us expected, it's a game that I think sits in that lukewarm area where I hope nothing happens to any of these teams, of course, but especially Ninja Theory, I still have faith in them, but I also wouldn't be totally surprised if this is a team that does get impacted by the layoffs. Rare is another EU-based team. This is also a coin toss because you got Sea of Thieves, which does really well. Great player count, constant updates, constant support. They just recommitted to more years of support for this game. So like Sea of Thieves is trucking on, or really sailing on. But meanwhile, you got Everwild. And Everwild is a game that we don't even know if it still exists. Like, we really don't know what's going on. Like, Rare has become a great live service developer, I guess, but that's not the Rare that many of us knew. And I will be completely honest, I don't have that attachment to like Banjo and other Rare IP. I didn't really grow up playing their games. I don't know much about their games outside of Donkey Kong 64. I do love that game. But when Everwild was first announced, like, what, 2020 or 2021? Like, it's been forever. A lot of us were excited, though, because it was like, yeah, Rare is getting back to what we know them for. So I feel like that team's got to have their days numbered. And then there's also King, which is located in parts of Europe, and they work on Candy Crush. Xbox did make a lot of positions redundant for Call of Duty. So initially, I'd look at something like King and go, oh, it's Candy Crush. You're printing money over there. Like, why would you make cuts? But it's about with these big corporations making the most efficient cuts where, oh, well, we're making X amount of dollars, but if we cut X, Y, and Z, we can make even more money. It's ridiculous, dude. So those are the companies in the EU and the UK and sort of my assessment of where they're at. Some, to me, more safer than others. But if I were to really turn my head to anyone, it's the underperformers. Those are the ones I worry about the most, just based on what we saw happen with the massive layoffs at the first quarter of last year, where we saw what happened with Redfall and sort of how things followed up in the months to come. So when I look at underperformers, I think there's no better example than Halo Studios. And I know I pick on 343/Halo Studios a lot, but here's a great reason why. Halo Infinite, right? This is going to be a spoiler for the end of the game if you do care, so go ahead and skip ahead. I just want to warn you about that. But they're making announcements about how they're following up Halo Infinite. And you'd hope it's a game, right? Well, it's a book. They have the cover reveal for Halo Edge of Dawn. And I was reading this and it says, after eliminating War Chief Escharum and sending the banished leadership into chaos, the Master Chief continues to fight on Zeta Halo, accompanied by his new AI companion and their loyal pilot, Fernando Esparza, as Spartan 117 searches for scattered Allied forces. A young combat medic, tortured and imprisoned for months by the banished and the enigmatic Harbinger, may hold the key to unlocking deeper mysteries within the ancient Ring world. But every step toward answers is haunted by the sinister and elusive Blade Master Jaga, who is hell-bent on vengeance. So yeah, they're continuing your mainline series of Halo in a book. And even some of the audio logs are continued in a book. I think it's clear that they're just going to restart this series with the Combat Evolved remake and probably remake 2 and 3 and so on. I think it's the safest thing they can do, and even then I'm still worried, but I feel like they might be affected because they've spun their wheels a lot since Halo Infinite, and they already faced a lot of layoffs, and I could see more hitting them. Turn 10, as we already discussed, is bracing for layoffs. This is a real sad story because it kind of shows how with Horizon's evolution and growth and popularity, it did not benefit Forza Motorsport in the way that I think many of us thought it would. A lot of the Defining Duke audience, especially what I like to joke and call them the Forza bros, like the people who are just racing cars constantly, had said to me, like, look, there's a place for like the car simulation, the true driver game. That's Forza Motorsport. And when I said that, hey, I think that Horizon does both of them, you know, arcadey and simulation well enough, a lot of people were like, no, that's not possible. But then you see the kind of car PG approach to Forza Motorsport has ended up putting Forza Motorsport on a lower rung on the ladder, because now we see how well Forza Horizon 5 continues to do. It's one of the best-selling games on PlayStation continuously, while Turn 10 can't seem to get things going in a big way for Forza Motorsport. It also didn't launch an impressive player count when the game first dropped the same month as Starfield. So yeah, as Horizon is just growing in this massive popular way, I feel like Turn 10 is naturally affected by this, because what else are they going to make? They're going to keep making these Forza games, and they kind of tried to make this new motorsport game like a platform, and it didn't really grow. So I thought the game was fun from what I played of it, but I also kind of laid it down within a week. And then the last one I need to talk about of underperformer candidates, to me, would be Compulsion Games. You know, you take 7 years to make South of Midnight. It's about a 10-hour game. The story's incomplete, and it doesn't look like the player count, both on Game Pass or Steam, the sales, nothing seemed to go really well for South of Midnight. It's truthfully very hard to imagine they get by unscathed. Could be totally wrong. They are a Canadian-based developer, so based on the rumors we have right now, EU and sort of UK-based studios, they might clear by, especially because, you know, South of Midnight's only a couple months old. But the message that was kind of sent with shutting down Tango Gameworks and how well that game did, despite being like a new IP and also being kind of for the hardcore gamer, is that companies like Compulsion aren't as valued by Xbox as they once were when they were first purchased. When teams like Compulsion or Playground and so on, Obsidian even, were purchased, like Xbox was in that mode of, we're gonna get great exclusives from these companies that we buy and we're gonna battle back PlayStation. Now the plan has changed, and I do wonder how smaller teams, even down to something like Double Fine, who's releasing Keeper later this year, I do wonder how those teams fare in this new regime of Xbox, where they're about the dollars and cents more than ever. I mean, they always have been, but this is like real profit plays here. And I worry about teams like Compulsion, because I do like their games. I didn't hate South of Midnight. I found it just a bit underwhelming, where it's like you didn't deliver after all those years, and not even the sales and the player count, but even like the core product. Like, it just was incomplete in my eyes. So I worry about teams like that with the message that's been sent with Hi-Fi Rush and how these rumors are building up. So we'll see. We'll cover the news when it does break. I'm hoping that it is as minimal as possible. But right now, with the chatter going on, I feel terrible for people who work at Xbox, because it's really building up across all these insiders that like something big is coming. And hopefully it does not lead to studio shutdowns, but time will tell. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on this Xbox news down below. Other than that, I will catch you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.